The heat hit Cole Revan like a physical thing the moment the cargo ramp hissed open. Carthex didn't believe in comfortable, it believed in profit, and profit apparently thrived at temperatures that made a man's shirt stick to his back before he'd taken 3 steps. Cole descended into the chaos of the landing district, squinting against the glare of 3 suns filtering through the moon's perpetual dust haze. Somewhere in the background, his ship's cooling system groaned like it was personally offended by the atmosphere. The asterisk Meridian's Gambit sat behind him looking exactly like what she was. A 70-year-old Corinth-class freighter held together by spite, improvisational welding, and Cole's stubborn refusal to admit she should have been scrapped a decade ago. But she flew, she kept her cargo mostly intact, and she'd never once hauled human misery for profit. 15 years he'd kept that record clean. 15 years of saying no to the easy money. Carthex existed specifically to make that harder. The fuel depot was on the far side of the landing zone, past the market district. Cole had plotted a course that avoided the slave pens entirely, a neat straight line between his ship and the deuterium pumps. But the nav computer had other ideas, specifically the kind that involved throwing an error code he'd never seen before and refusing to recalculate until he'd manually reset the plasma coupling, which meant he'd landed 3 berths off target, which meant the straight line now went directly through the heart of the market. Cole stood at the edge of the district and seriously considered just paying the premium for a berth transfer. The sound of the market washed over him, a polyglot chaos of languages, species, and misery packaged as commerce. Vorlaxian traders bellowed prices in their clicking dialect. Herlon merchants gestured with too many arms at merchandise that flinched. The air smelled like unwashed bodies, exotic spices, and desperation, with a hint of ozone from the stun fields keeping the merchandise compliant. "It's a shortcut," he muttered to no one. "Walk fast, eyes forward, you've done this before." He had, actually. Frontier stations were lawless places where the Galactic Concordat's anti-slavery laws meant about as much as its guidelines on acceptable coffee strength, which was to say, completely ignored. You learned to navigate it the way you navigated asteroid fields, carefully, without getting too close to anything that might explode. Cole pushed into the crowd. The market was arranged in long rows of pens and platforms, each one a small stage for human and non-human tragedy. He kept his gaze locked on the fuel depot's sign glowing in the distance. Don't look, don't engage, don't think about it. A child was crying somewhere to his left. Cole's jaw tightened, but he kept walking. Fresh stock from the Calithian territories. A merchant was shouting. Trained soldiers, domestic labor, all certified disease-free. Cole's boots crunched on the gritty permacrete. Almost through, just a few more rows, then he saw her. Later, Cole would wonder what made him look. Maybe it was the way the crowd seemed to part for just a second, creating a clear sightline. Maybe it was exhaustion making him sloppy. Maybe it was just bad luck wearing a different hat. But he looked, and there she was. Blue skin that caught the harsh market lights like deep water, golden hair that fell past her shoulders despite the matted tangles, and ears. Those distinctly elongated ears that swept back from her skull in elegant points. Calithian, a warrior race that had gone toe-to-toe with the sovereignty for 3 years before their worlds burned. She was chained between a Vorlaxian with gear oil stains and a human girl who couldn't have been more than 16. The Calithian woman stood differently than the others. Not defiant exactly, defiance got you stunned in places like this, but present, aware. Like she was evaluating the crowd as much as they were evaluating her. Their eyes met. Cole should have looked away, should have kept walking, should have remembered his 15-year record and every reason he maintained it. Instead, he stopped. She held his gaze for 3 heartbeats, and in that moment Cole saw something that hooked into his chest like a cargo grapple. Pride wrapped in desperation, intelligence forced into performance, a warrior reduced to merchandise but somehow not reduced at all. Then she did something that would change everything. She spoke. Not loud, not pleading, just clear enough to cut through the market's roar. "Please buy me, human." 4 words, delivered with the kind of dignity that shouldn't have been possible for someone in chains. Not a scream or a sob, but a request, almost businesslike if you ignored the way her hands were trembling. A fat Herlon materialized at Cole's elbow with the predatory instinct of merchants everywhere. Vex, the name was burned into Cole's memory now, had 6 arms and a smile that showed too many teeth. "Excellent taste, friend. This one's special. Thissa Var Kale, former Storm Lance of the Calithian Third Fleet. Tactical training, combat certified, speaks 6 languages. She's been on the block for 2 weeks and the price reflects quality merchandise." Cole's stomach turned, not interested. Of course. Vex's arms gestured in elaborate patterns that were probably meaningful in Herlon culture but just looked like waving to Cole. But consider, a woman of her skills, security, navigation, cultural liaison. The investment pays for itself. And between you and me, one arm dropped conspiratorially around Cole's shoulders. The Calithians have other attractive qualities. Very loyal once bonded. Ask anyone who knows the species. Cole should have walked away then. Every rational neuron in his brain was screaming at him to move. But Thissa was still watching him with those golden eyes, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't random. She'd chosen him specifically. Picked him out of the crowd somehow. How much? The number Vex quoted was obscene. Cole countered with something marginally less obscene. Vex clutched at his midsection like he'd been stabbed. They settled on a price that would drain Cole's reserve fuel fund and mean eating protein paste for the next 3 months. Cole transferred the credits from his wristcom, the transaction leaving a sick taste in his mouth. Vex handed him a data chip, proof of legal purchase, as if legality meant anything in the frontier's lawless zones, and released Thissa's chains from the platform anchor. "Pleasure doing business, Captain. She's all yours. Fully vaccinated, no refunds. Standard market warranty applies." Cole took the chain. The weight of it in his hand felt obscene. Thissa stood, her movements careful, controlled. Up close he could see the faded warrior tattoos on her arms, geometric patterns that probably meant something significant in Calithian culture. She was taller than he'd realized, nearly eye level with him. They walked through the market in silence, Cole leading because he held the chain and hating every step of it. When they finally reached the * Meridian's Gambit *, he all but dragged her up the cargo ramp. The moment the ramp sealed behind them, cutting off the market's noise and heat, Cole dropped the chain like it burned. "Computer, locate nearest release mechanism for these chains." His ship's AI responded in its perpetually bored tone. "Universal restraint release protocol located. Executing." The chains fell away with a magnetic click. Thissa rubbed her wrists, those golden eyes never leaving Cole's face. "Thank you." "Don't." Cole's voice came out harsher than intended. "Don't thank me. I shouldn't have. This whole thing is." He ran a hand through his hair, searching for words. "Look, there's a public shuttle depot 2 kilometers from here. I'll transfer enough credits to get you to a Concordat station where they have actual refugee services. You're free. Go anywhere you want." Thissa tilted her head slightly, those elongated ears catching the cargo bay's fluorescent light. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute certainty. "I go where you go now, Captain." Cole stared at her. No, that's not how this works. I freed you, you leave, simple." "You purchased me. To set you free." "Yes." Thissa nodded as if he'd proven her point. "You bought my freedom. In my culture, that creates a life debt. I serve until the debt is balanced." Cole felt a headache building behind his eyes. "I don't want a servant. I don't want anyone on this ship but me. I work alone. That is inefficient. It's how I like it." Thissa looked around the cargo bay, her gaze cataloging the controlled chaos of 15 years hauling freight. Spare parts stacked haphazardly, a plasma conduit that probably shouldn't be sparking, a galley that hadn't been properly cleaned since Cole took possession of the ship. "I can see that," she said dryly. "Despite everything, The credits drain, the moral compromise, the complete upending of his carefully maintained solitude. Cole felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Was that a joke? Warriors are capable of humor, Captain. It's Cole. Just Cole. He sighed, recognizing defeat in its many creative forms. Fine. You can stay until we reach the next major station, but then you're gone. Understood. Thissa's golden eyes held something that might have been amusement. As you say, Captain Cole. The way she said it made him certain he just agreed to something more complicated than temporary shelter. But the fuel gauge was blinking. The nav computer needed that reset. And somewhere out there, the market still churned with its casual atrocities. At least he'd saved one person, even if she apparently didn't want to be saved in any way he understood. 3 days into what Cole had optimistically called temporary shelter, his ship had been reorganized, his cargo manifests color-coded by destination and profit margin, and his galley now produced food that didn't taste like the recycler had a grudge against him. The plasma conduit that had been sparking ominously for 6 months was silent. His coffee still tasted like recycled despair, but Thissa was working on it. Cole sat in the cockpit watching her through the open hatch as she sorted through his nav charts with the methodical precision of someone who'd once commanded fleet movements. Those elongated ears twitched occasionally when she found something particularly egregious in his filing system, which was apparently everything. You labeled this sector, the one with pirates, maybe? She called out. It's descriptive. It's 3-star systems. And they all have pirates, maybe. He heard what might have been a sigh. The asterisk Meridian's gambit hummed around them, cruising through FTL toward Covenant Station, where Cole had a cargo pickup scheduled. 3 days of shared space, and they'd barely talked about anything that mattered. Thissa worked. Cole flew. They orbited each other in the careful dance of two people pretending this arrangement made any sense. But the silence was starting to itch worse than the question marks. Cole set the autopilot and made his way to the galley. Thissa had requisitioned it as her command center. Nav charts spread across every surface except the small table where Cole ate. She glanced up as he entered, those golden eyes reflecting the screen light. "We need to talk," Cole said. "We are currently speaking." "Cute, I mean really talk." He grabbed 2 bulbs of the terrible coffee and tossed one to her. She caught it with reflexes that suggested military training ran deep. "Who are you? And don't give me the name Vex told me. I want the real story." Thissa held the coffee bulb but didn't drink, studying it like it might contain answers she wasn't ready to give. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its careful neutrality. "Thissa Varkale, Storm Lance of the 3rd Fleet, Tactical Division. I coordinated fleet movements during the Sovereignty War." She paused, those ears tilting back slightly. "We lost." "I know, everyone knows." "Knowing and understanding are different things, Captain. When the Calithian worlds fell, our warriors scattered. Some died fighting last stands against ships they couldn't destroy. Others were captured as assets to recoup the victor's costs." She squeezed the coffee bulb, not drinking. "I spent 4 weeks on Carthex's market platforms. Buyers evaluated me like cargo, checked my teeth, scanned for diseases, asked the merchant if I was housebroken." Cole felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Thissa." "I watched dozens of potential buyers pass by. Traders looking for labor, syndicate thugs looking for leverage, private collectors looking for exotic acquisitions." She finally met his eyes. "Then you walked past. You weren't even looking at the pens. Your trajectory suggested you were avoiding them entirely." "I was. I know. I accessed your ship's public registry data while waiting. 15 years of cargo runs, not one slave transport on record. Every port you've docked, every contract logged clean." She set the coffee bulb down with careful precision. "So I gambled that a man who spent 15 years avoiding the trade might be the kind of man who would help if asked directly." The pieces clicked together in Cole's head with the unpleasant clarity of a targeting lock. "You manipulated me. I made a tactical decision with limited resources. That's a fancy way of saying you played me." Yes. No apology in her voice, just flat acknowledgement. I needed someone who wouldn't sell me to the first bidder, someone stubborn enough to refuse easy money, someone who might help even when it was inconvenient. Those golden eyes held his without flinching. I chose you, Captain, and I would choose you again. Cole wanted to be angry, should have been angry, but he'd spent 15 years in the frontier's moral gray zones where survival meant making hard choices with incomplete information. He understood tactical decisions, didn't mean he had to like them. So what's the rest of it? Because nobody goes through that much trouble just for a ride to the next station. This's ears flattened slightly, the first real tell he'd seen from her. The Calithian Empire kept weapons caches scattered throughout the frontier, hidden stockpiles for operations deep in contested space. When our worlds fell, the Syndicate hunted for the location data. They caught me 2 years ago, tried to extract the information. She touched her temple, where a faint scar traced along her hairline. Neural interrogation is imperfect. I escaped with the data still locked in my head, but they've been hunting me ever since. Wait, Cole's coffee bulb hovered halfway to his mouth. You're telling me you have coordinates to military weapons caches in your brain, and the Syndicate wants them badly enough to track you across star systems? Yes, and you brought this to my ship. Yes. My ship that has no weapons except a cargo-handling plasma torch and hope. I noticed that. This's expression remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in those eyes. Your defensive capabilities are suboptimal. Cole started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of the situation hit him like a pressure wave. He'd bought a fugitive carrying military secrets while flying a rust bucket freighter through some of the most dangerous space in the frontier. His careful, quiet life of hauling cargo and avoiding complications had just nosedived into a situation that would get him killed, arrested, or both. Suboptimal, he repeated, still laughing. That's one word for it. You're angry. I'm something, haven't figured out what yet. He took a long drink of the terrible coffee, letting the bitterness ground him. You should have told me. Would you have purchased me if you'd known? Probably not. Then I made the correct tactical choice. Thissa picked up her coffee bulb, took a careful sip, and immediately made a face. This beverage is actively hostile. Yeah, I've been meaning to fix that for about 10 years. I will add it to my list. She met his eyes again, and this time there was something softer in her expression. I apologize for the deception, but not for the choice. You were my best option for survival, and I was yours for successfully navigating frontier politics. The Syndicate won't expect you to be harboring what they're hunting. That's not exactly reassuring. It's realistic. She stood, moving to the galley's small food processor, already tapping through menus with the efficiency of someone who'd memorized the interface. In Calithian culture, a life debt isn't servitude, it's partnership. I owe you my freedom, so I serve until that debt balances. But if you accept the service, you also accept responsibility for my survival. It's reciprocal. I don't remember agreeing to that. You accepted my presence on your ship for 3 days. In my culture, that constitutes acceptance. She glanced over her shoulder, ears tilted in what might have been amusement. You've been culturally bound without realizing it. That seems like something you should have mentioned. Would you have listened? Probably not. Then I made the correct, tactical choice. Yeah, I'm getting that. Cole finished his coffee and immediately regretted it. So what happens when this life debt balances? You just leave. Thissa was quiet for a moment, focused on the food processor with more attention than it warranted. The debt can balance in different ways. I serve until you consider us even, or she trailed off. Or what? Or it evolves into something called a bond partnership. When two people have shared survival enough times that the debt becomes irrelevant because you're choosing to stay regardless. She turned to face him fully. But that requires both parties to want it. It's not automatic. Cole processed this information while his ship hummed around them, and the FTL drive counted down the distance to Covenant Station. 3 days ago, he'd been alone and simple. Now he had a fugitive warrior with military secrets, a culture-based debt he'd accidentally accepted, and the syndicate potentially on his tail. "Your coffee still tastes like engine coolant," he said finally. Thissa blinked. "That's your response to everything I just explained." "It's a starting point. You fix the coffee, I don't space you for bringing a target onto my ship. We can negotiate the complicated cultural bonding stuff after we survive whatever happens next." For the first time since he'd met her, Thissa smiled. Actually smiled, not the careful neutrality or warrior's mask, but genuine amusement that lit her face and made those golden eyes bright. "You navigate like you label star charts. Poorly, chaotically, but somehow arriving at functional destinations." "I'll take it." Cole headed back toward the cockpit, then paused. "Hey, Thissa, for what it's worth, I get it. The tactical choice thing. Frontier makes you do math on survival you shouldn't have to do." "Thank you, Captain." "Still Cole, just Cole." "As you say, Captain Cole." He was starting to suspect she was doing that on purpose. The proximity alarm chimed softly. They were approaching Covenant Station's mass shadow, about to drop out of FTL. Cole slid into the pilot's chair and brought up the nav display. Thissa appeared at his shoulder, her presence comfortable in a way that should have bothered him but didn't. "How bad is Covenant Station?" she asked. "Scale of 1 to Carthex." "Yes. Solid 7. Better laws, worse enforcement." He brought the * gambit * out of FTL with the practiced ease of 15 years at the helm. Covenant Station materialized ahead, a massive wheel spinning slowly against the void, lights dotting its surface like a city at night. "Stay close, keep your head down, and if anyone asks, you're my new nav specialist." "I am your nav specialist." "Yeah, but let's not mention the part about the life debt and the military secrets." "Agreed." Cole guided the * Meridian's gambit toward the docking ring, requesting clearance with traffic control. The station grew larger, its commercial districts already visible through the cockpit. Markets, bars, trade offices, and all the infrastructure of frontier commerce. Somewhere in there he had a cargo pickup, and apparently a warrior with a target on her back who decided he was worth the gamble. "Thissa." "Yes." "Thanks for not lying about being trouble, even if you waited 3 days to tell me." "You're welcome, Captain." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thunk. Cole killed the engines and ran through the shutdown sequence. 3 days ago, he'd thought buying her freedom would be the complicated part. Turned out he'd bought so much more than that, and he was still figuring out whether to be terrified or grateful. Maybe both. Covenant Station smelled like recycled air, fried food, and opportunities that would probably get you arrested. Cole navigated the crowded corridors with Thissa half a step behind, her golden hair tucked under a maintenance cap that did absolutely nothing to hide those distinctive ears. People still stared. Blue skin and Calithian features weren't exactly common this far into human-controlled space. "Everyone's looking at me," Thissa murmured. "Yeah, the hat's not helping as much as I'd hoped. Perhaps we should have obtained a more comprehensive disguise." "You mean like a full face mask and bodysuit?" "That would have been effective. It also would have made you look like you're hiding something, which is basically a neon sign saying, 'Please investigate me.'" Cole steered them around a group of Vorlaxian traders arguing loudly about shipping rates. "Just act natural. You're my nav specialist. We're here for cargo, boring freight hauling stuff." "I excel at boring." Cole glanced at her. "You commanded fleet tactical operations during a war." "Very boring fleet tactical operations." Despite the tension coiling in his gut, Cole grinned. They pushed through the crowd toward the commercial district where his contact waited. The Gravity Well occupied a prime corner location, its entrance marked by a holographic sign showing a cartoon spaceship spiraling into a drink glass. Subtle it wasn't, but the bar had been a fixture on Covenant Station for 20 years and served information alongside alcohol. Inside, the lighting was deliberately dim, better for making deals you didn't want recorded. The crowd was the usual frontier mix, traders, pilots, station workers, and the kind of people who did jobs without clear job descriptions. Cole spotted his contact at a corner booth and started toward him. A hand grabbed his shoulder. Cole turned to find a drunk Vorlaxian swaying in front of him, all 6 eyes struggling to focus. The trader's translation collar crackled as it converted his speech to standard. "Thassa Kalithian," the Vorlaxian slurred, one manipulator pointing vaguely at Thissa. "They lost the war. Losers, all of them." "We're just passing through," Cole said evenly. "You know what they do with Kalithian slaves now." The Vorlaxian lurched closer, his breath smelling like fermented something. "Break 'em in proper, teach 'em their place. You want I should show you. Got a ship, got a cargo hold, could demonstrate." Thissa moved. One moment she was standing behind Cole, the next her hand had captured the Vorlaxian's gesturing manipulator and twisted it into a configuration that made the alien's eyes go wide. She applied pressure with clinical precision, forcing him down onto one knee. "There are 17 ways to break a Vorlaxian gripping appendage using basic leverage," Thissa said conversationally. "This is number 4. Would you like to experience numbers 5 through 17? Or would you prefer to apologize and return to your drink?" The Vorlaxian made a sound that the translator couldn't quite process. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you clearly." "Apologize, I apologize." The words came out in a rush. "Please, my arm." Thissa released him. The Vorlaxian scrambled backward, cradling his manipulator, and practically ran for the exit. The bar had gone quiet, dozens of eyes watching the blue-skinned woman who just demonstrated that Kalithian warriors didn't need weapons to be dangerous. Cole waited a beat, then turned to Thissa. "Was that appropriate for human social customs?" "I exercised restraint." "You demonstrated 17 different ways to break bones." "I only used one. That's 16 units of restraint." She adjusted her cap, those ears twitching slightly. Should I have allowed him to continue? No, but maybe next time we could try words first. Words were ineffective. He was intoxicated and aggressive. Physical deterrence achieved the desired result with minimal actual harm. She paused. "Did I embarrass you?" Cole looked at her, really looked at her. 3 days ago she'd been a desperate woman in chains. Now she stood in a frontier bar having just taken down a drunk twice her size, and she was worried about embarrassing him. The absurdity of it hit him sideways. "Not even a little bit," he said. "Come on, let's get this cargo deal sorted before you demonstrate any more restraint." They made their way to the corner booth where Cole's contact waited. Jace Wren was human, early 50s, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent decades in space. He nodded to Cole and raised an eyebrow at Thissa. "New crew?" Jace asked. "Nav specialist," Cole said, sliding into the booth. Thissa sat beside him, her posture alert despite the casual setting. "What have you got for me?" "Standard run to Helios Station. Medical supplies, no questions asked about origin." Jace pulled out a data pad and slid it across the table. 10,000 credits half up front. Cole scanned the manifest. Medical supplies usually meant gray market pharmaceuticals. Not illegal exactly, but not something you advertised. "When's pickup?" "Berth 47, Bay 3. Cargo's ready now." Jace's eyes kept drifting to Thissa. "That's a Kalithian. She's also sitting right here and can hear you." "Just making an observation. Word is the syndicate's been sniffing around the station, looking for something they lost." His gaze stayed on Thissa. "Something valuable." Cole felt ice water in his veins but kept his expression neutral. "The syndicate's always looking for something. It's kind of their whole business model." "True enough." Jace pulled the data pad back. "You want the job or not?" "I'll take it." They shook on it, credits transferred to Cole's account with the familiar chime of successful transaction. Jace left first, melting into the bar's crowd. Cole sat for a moment, processing the information. "He knows," Thissa said quietly. "Yeah. Should we be concerned?" Jace is old-school frontier. He doesn't care what you're hauling as long as you pay your debts and don't bring trouble to his doorstep. Cole stood scanning the crowd with new wariness. But if he noticed, others will too. We need to make this quick. They left the gravity well and headed for the birth district. The corridors were more industrial here. Less crowd, more cargo haulers in mechanic jumpsuits. Cole kept his hand near his stunner. Not that it would do much good if the syndicate had actual weapons, but it made him feel marginally less helpless. Berth 47 was a standard cargo bay, all metal and magnetic locks. The medical supplies were packed in sterilized containers, unmarked but professional. Cole started running the loading checklist while Thissa supervised the grav pallets, directing them toward the asterisk Meridian's gambit with the efficiency of someone who'd managed military logistics. "Captain," she said suddenly, her voice tight. Cole looked up. A woman stood at the bay entrance, her posture casual but her eyes sharp. She wore the kind of nondescript clothing that was its own uniform: gray jacket, practical pants, no insignia except a small shoulder patch Cole recognized immediately. "Tivon Syndicate. Captain Revan," the woman said pleasantly. "Interesting cargo you're loading." "Just medical supplies, all properly licensed." "I'm sure they are." She stepped further into the bay, her gaze sliding to Thissa. "That's a beautiful nav specialist you've acquired. Calithian, if I'm not mistaken." "You're not. Funny thing, we've been tracking a particular Calithian through the frontier. Former military. Carrying information we'd very much like to recover." The woman's smile never reached her eyes. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Cole's mind raced through options, none of them good. They were in an enclosed space with one exit. The woman was almost certainly armed. Running would confirm guilt. Fighting was suicide. Thissa saved him from having to choose. "I believe you're thinking of someone else," she said, her voice perfectly neutral. "I've been Captain Revan's nav specialist for 6 months. Before that, I worked cargo routing on Persef Station. I can provide employment records if needed." It was a complete lie, delivered with such calm conviction that even Cole almost believed it. The woman studied Thissa for a long moment, and Cole could practically see the calculations happening behind those eyes. 6 months, the woman repeated. "Yes, the captain found my skills satisfactory enough to retain long-term employment." Thissa's ears didn't even twitch. "Is there a problem with my documentation?" The tension stretched like a targeting lock. Then the woman's smile widened fractionally. "No problem at all, just doing our due diligence. The syndicate likes to know who's moving through our territories." She nodded to Cole. "Enjoy your run to Helios, Captain." She left. Cole waited until her footsteps faded before letting out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. 6 months, he said. "Lying requires specificity. Vague timeframes invite scrutiny. You just lied to a syndicate operative without even blinking." "I've had practice." Thissa turned back to the cargo, but Cole caught the slight tremor in her hands. "We should finish loading quickly." They worked in silence, getting the medical supplies secured in the asterisk Gambit's cargo hold. Cole ran the pre-flight checks twice, his paranoia doing overtime. By the time they cleared Covenant Station's traffic control and jumped to FTL, his shoulders were knotted with tension. Thissa found him in the cockpit an hour later, staring at the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel. "They know I'm here," she said. "Yeah. I should leave. At the next station I'll—" "No." Cole surprised himself with how quickly the word came out. "You leave, they catch you within a week, maybe less. If I stay, they catch both of us. Then we don't get caught." He turned to face her, seeing the weight she carried in those golden eyes. "You chose me because I was stubborn, remember? Well, congratulations, you were right. I don't quit jobs halfway through." "This isn't a job." "No," Cole agreed. "It's significantly more complicated and way less profitable. But we're in it now, so we might as well see it through." Thissa was quiet for a moment, then softly, "Thank you. Thank me when we survive. Right now, I'm just too tired to figure out a better plan." He gestured to the co-pilot's chair. "Sit. Tell me about these weapons caches in your head, because if the syndicate wants them that badly, maybe we can figure out why." She sat, and as the asterisk Meridian's gambit carried them deeper into the frontier's uncertain territories, Thissa began to talk. Cole listened, piecing together a puzzle that was bigger and more dangerous than he'd imagined. Somewhere behind them the Syndicate was hunting, and somewhere ahead answers waited in the coordinates locked inside Thissa's mind. But right now, in this moment, they were alive and moving. In the frontier, that counted as winning. The proximity alarm screamed at exactly the wrong moment, which was to say, any moment when Cole was trying to drink his still terrible coffee in peace. He lurched forward in the pilot's chair, hot liquid sloshing over his hand as 3 red dots materialized on the scanner. Tivon Needle-class fighters, sleek and predatory, dropping out of FTL with weapons already hot. Thissa. Cole slammed the coffee bulb into its holder and grabbed the controls. We've got company. She was already moving, sliding into the co-pilot seat with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times in combat. Her fingers flew across the tactical display, routes and vectors appearing faster than Cole could process. 3 hunters attack formation Delta. They're not trying to destroy us. Her golden eyes scanned the readouts. They want us disabled and boarded. That's not actually comforting. It means we have options. She pulled up a navigation overlay, highlighting a massive cloud formation ahead. The Kess Nebula. Radioactive interference will scatter their targeting systems. It'll also scatter ours. You'll have to fly manually. She glanced at him. Can you navigate blind? Cole threw the asterisk Meridian's gambit into a hard turn as plasma fire streaked past the port side, close enough that the shields flared white. Guess we're about to find out. The ship wasn't built for combat maneuvers. She was a cargo hauler, designed for steady, reliable thrust and maximum hold capacity, not for dodging weapons fire from ships that cost more than everything Cole had ever owned. But he'd kept her flying for 15 years through situations that should have killed him, and stubborn refusal to die had gotten him pretty far. Redirecting auxiliary power to aft shields, Thissa called out, her hands moving across the console. Port thruster efficiency at 73%, starboard compensating. Another plasma burst caught them, the ship shuddering. Warning lights cascaded across the board. How long to the nebula? Cole asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. 2 minutes 40 seconds at current speed. They'll shred us in 90. Then we need to be unpredictable. Thissa's fingers danced across the power distribution controls. When I say now, cut main engines and rotate 30 degrees port. That'll kill our momentum. That's the point. They're calculating intercept vectors based on constant acceleration. If we suddenly stop, they overshoot. Cole grinned despite the alarm screaming around him. You know, this would be a lot more fun if we weren't about to die. Focus on not dying. Fun is secondary. Now you sound like every flight instructor I ever had. Now, Cole killed the engines. The gambit lurched as momentum carried her forward while he spun her 30 degrees on thrusters alone. The pursuing fighters streaked past, their plasma fire cutting through empty space where his ship should have been. Cole slammed the engines back to full power, angling toward the nebula's approaching mass. That bought us maybe 30 seconds, he said. Then we used them efficiently. Thissa was already rerouting power, her tactical mind working 3 moves ahead. They'll compensate for the deceleration trick. We need something they won't expect. I'm open to suggestions that don't involve exploding. How attached are you to your cargo? Cole spared a glance at the hold status. The medical supplies Jace had hired him to transport sat secure in their containers. 10,000 credits worth of gray market pharmaceuticals that were probably the only reason the asterisk gambit wouldn't be running on fumes next month. Not as attached as I am to breathing, he admitted. Eject containers 4 through 7, scatter pattern maximum dispersion. Cole understood immediately. They have to dodge or get debris in their intakes. Correct. It won't stop them, but it will slow them down. She met his eyes, something fierce and alive in her expression despite the danger, and we only need to slow them enough to reach the nebula. He initiated the emergency jettison. 4 cargo containers blew free from the hold, spinning outward in a spreading cloud of metal and medical supplies. The pursuing fighters scattered, their formation breaking as they maneuvered around the unexpected obstacle. The nebula loomed ahead, a roiling mass of radioactive particles that made sensors scream and pilots sweat. Cole had skirted the edge once before and sworn never to do it again. Now he was flying straight into its heart with 3 syndicate hunters on his tail. "If we survive this," he said, "I'm billing you for that cargo. If we survive this, I'll calculate fair compensation." This's hands moved constantly, adjusting shield harmonics to account for the radiation they were about to enter. 60 seconds to nebula boundary. The first wisps of charged particles hit the hull, making the shields flicker. Visibility dropped as the swirling colors of the nebula filled the viewscreen. Cole's instruments went haywire, navigation data scrambling into useless noise. He was flying blind now, with only his instincts and 15 years of experience to keep them from slamming into something solid at speeds that would vaporize the ship. The hunters followed. He couldn't see them anymore, but he knew they were there, hunting through the same radioactive soup. "They've lost weapons lock," Thissa reported. "We're ghosts now. Ghosts with no idea where we're going." Cole adjusted course by feel, following the currents of charged particles. "How long do we hide in here?" "Until they give up, or we find an exit vector that doesn't lead straight back to them." She was calm, focused, the warrior who'd commanded fleet operations showing through. "The nebula is approximately 40,000 kilometers in diameter. We have options." Something massive loomed out of the murk ahead, the dark silhouette of a dead ship, its hull torn open by forces Cole didn't want to imagine. He pulled them into a hard turn, the gambit asterisk groaning with the stress. "Was that there before?" he asked. "The nebula has claimed many ships. We won't be one of them." "Your confidence is reassuring." "I'm Kalithian. We don't panic, we calculate." Even when flying blind through radioactive death clouds. Especially then. Despite everything, the danger, the blind flying, the syndicate hunters somewhere in the murk, Cole laughed. The sound felt wrong in the crisis moment, but also exactly right. Thissa looked at him like he'd lost his mind, those elongated ears tilted in concern. "You're laughing," she observed. "Yeah. We're being hunted by criminals who want to torture information from my brain. We've jettisoned a quarter of your cargo, and we're navigating blind through a stellar phenomenon that has a casualty rate of 73%. When you put it that way, it sounds bad. It is objectively bad, which is why laughing is better than screaming." Cole made another course correction, avoiding a cluster of metallic debris. "Besides, 3 weeks ago I was alone, bored, and drinking terrible coffee. Now I'm still drinking terrible coffee, but at least life's interesting." Thissa was quiet for a moment, then softly, "You're insane." "Probably. You chose me, remember. I'm beginning to question my tactical assessment. Too late now. You're stuck with me until this life-debt thing balances." He glanced at her, catching the small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "Unless you want to renegotiate." "No," the word came quick and certain. "I don't want to renegotiate." They flew in companionable silence, Cole navigating by instinct while Thissa monitored what little sensor data filtered through the interference. The minutes stretched, tension gradually easing as the hunters failed to reappear. Either they'd lost the trail or decided chasing ghosts through the nebula wasn't worth the risk. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, the swirling colors began to thin. Clear space emerged ahead, stars visible once more. Cole brought them out of the nebula slowly, scanning for threats. Empty space. The hunters were gone. "We made it," Thissa said, something like wonder in her voice. "Don't sound so surprised. I'm an excellent pilot. You fly like you're drunk but somehow arrive sober." "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me this week." Cole set a course away from the nebula, plotting a vector that would take them deeper into frontier space where the syndicate's reach was weaker. So what now? They know I'm carrying you. They'll keep hunting. Yes. Thissa pulled up star charts, her tactical mind already working the problem. We need to go where they can't easily follow. Disputed territories, corporate zones, places where syndicate operations risk exposure. So we become nomads, cargo runners with targets on our backs, dodging hunters while making enough credits to keep flying. Cole considered this new reality. That's a significant downgrade from my previous boring existence. I can leave. She said it without looking at him. At the next station I'll disappear, you'll be safe. You leave, they catch you in a week. We covered this. So you're committed to this, to running, to risking your ship and your life for someone who manipulated you into buying her. Cole thought about it, really thought about it. 3 weeks ago he'd been alone and safe. Now he was hunted and complicated and drinking coffee that still tasted like despair. But Thissa had also fixed his plasma conduit, organized his chaos, and proven herself in crisis. She'd chosen him specifically, gambled on his character, and been right about what kind of man he was. The life debt she kept talking about went both ways, even if she wouldn't admit it. Here's the thing about frontier life, he said finally. It's dangerous whether you're alone or partnered. The difference is alone you die knowing nobody cared, partnered you die knowing someone will remember. He met her golden eyes. I'd rather be remembered. That's unusually philosophical for someone who labels star systems maybe pirates. I contain multitudes. You contain bad filing systems and worse coffee. Which you're fixing, so technically we're already partners. He pulled up the navigation plot, studying their options. We've got maybe 3 months of operating funds if we're careful. Enough to establish new trade routes, build contacts in territories where the syndicate can't easily operate. After that we reassess based on current conditions, Thissa finished. She was smiling now, really smiling. That's very tactical of you, Captain. I'm learning from the best. Cole initiated the FTL calculations, watching the stars ahead blur into possibility. Question though, this bond partnership thing you mentioned. How does someone know when the life debt has evolved into that? When survival stops being the reason you stay together? When you're choosing each other because the alternative is unthinkable, regardless of danger or debt? So basically, when you'd rather die together than live apart. That's the romantic version. The practical version is when your operational efficiency as a unit exceeds your individual capabilities, and the emotional cost of separation outweighs the tactical benefits. Cole stared at her. You just described falling in love using military logistics terminology. Those elongated ears tilted back, and what he was learning meant embarrassment. I'm Calithian. We're not particularly skilled at romantic expression. No, it was perfect, weirdly perfect. He engaged the FTL drive, feeling the familiar lurch as reality bent around them. For the record, I think we passed that threshold somewhere around the time you demonstrated 17 ways to break a Vorlaxian's arm. That was number 4. Still counts. They sat together as the asterisk Meridian's gambit carried them deeper into frontier space. 2 people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and decided to make it work anyway. The syndicate would keep hunting. The frontier would keep being dangerous. The coffee would probably always taste terrible. But Cole Revan, who'd spent 15 years carefully alone, had discovered something worth more than safety. Someone who'd chosen him specifically, seen exactly who he was, and asked him to be that person with her. Hey, Thissa. Yes, thanks for the plea in the market, the please buy me thing. She looked at him, golden eyes reflecting the FTL drive's swirling light. You're welcome, Captain. Just Cole. I know, she smiled, but I prefer Captain Cole. He suspected she'd been doing that on purpose all along, and honestly, he didn't mind anymore. The asterisk Meridian's gambit jumped to light speed, carrying them toward an uncertain future that somehow felt less lonely than the safe past he'd left behind. In the frontier's vast darkness, they'd found something neither had expected, partnership, possibility, and the strange comfort of facing danger together. It wasn't the life Cole had planned, but as This's hand settled on his shoulder in silent companionship, he realized it might be exactly the life he needed.